very old traditions. And I mentioned about beginning in the evening or in darkness. Much of the Celtic cosmology that we know about, like I mentioned, we don't know the precise beliefs, but we do know something about those ancient people. So other things are also in the cosmology and the way of understanding the universe. So cosmos is from the Greek for universe, and it relates to people's their religions and their people's understanding of themselves in relation to the universe, whether that's believing in different gods or in spirits and so on. So other things that begin in darkness, like a baby in the womb is born out into the light, seeds in the ground are in the darkness and come out into the light in springtime. So there's a lot of symbolism to do with darkness and light. So Samhain, as the start of the dark half of the year, it's thought that the Celtic peoples divided the year into a bright half or light half and the dark half. So the dark half begins at Samhain. So it's a time for gathering together in the face of that darkness. So everybody's entering the winter together. So in a way it's a bit frightening because people have to survive through the winter. So it's not like we live now where people can just go to the supermarket or life is easier in that sense. So if people are relying on the land for their food, the winter can be scary because you have less produce to live on, and you have to keep things in the cupboards in store for the winter time. So symbolically, the festival of Samhain is the death of one year and the start of a new cycle. So it's wintertime, it's the start of a new year, but not the new year in the way we celebrate it nowadays. So there's not evidence that it was a big like a New Year's Day now. That evidence isn't there for the Celtic festival. So it is a time more of gathering together and reasserting, that we're all alive, even though we're heading into the winter time. So symbolically, as I mentioned, it's the death of the old year, and it's also associated with the death in other ways. It's the traditional time to decide when you're slaughtering animals. So it's associated with animal slaughter, but also feasting. And the reason why animals had to be slaughtered was because the farmers had to decide which ones they were going to keep through the winter time. So they'd have to have enough food to feed those animals. And archaeologists have found things like fire pits and maybe preserved bones, and that can suggest feasting. Where with archaeology it's tricky to tell whether something is sacrifice or whether it's feasting when you don't have other contextual information. But it seems like the festivals were times to feast and celebrate the seasonal transition. And then when you jump ahead in time, in pre-modern Ireland, when you had the first collections of folklore and information about the lives of ordinary people, there was some information collected about other kinds of beliefs to do with sound, like it's the time where you're supposed to have all your debts paid, so you're supposed to settle things up, and that ties in with one cycle ending and the next beginning, because it's not lucky to have any kind of debts or anything hanging over you going into a new cycle. And it's also traditionally the time to use up anything that you have in store in the cupboards. So I'll come back to that in terms of what the traditional meals and the things people would eat are. So it's also strongly associated with death to do with the ancestors coming back to where they once lived. So there's many, you can make connections between things that people do now on Halloween and early modern times or pre-modern Ireland, and then you can try to connect the dots, if you like, back to ancient times, but it can be very it can be difficult to directly trace folklore back to ancient times when we have a whole lot of information missing. So the Feast of the Dead is what Samhain is called, and in the different Celtic regions there are similar kind of words and phrases used to describe the festival. So in Ireland and Scotland there are many cultural similarities because they're both Gaelic traditions. But then you have other parts of Europe that are Celtic, particularly the Isle of Man has many similar traditions to Ireland. So in Ireland, one of the names for Samhain is Youghal, which just means winter night, or Ethnology, which is spirit night. So spirits of the dead, or other spirits. The idea that they're around. So Iha Hauna in Irish, and then in Manx it's Iha Hauni, so very similar even in the name. And Ethnology is also used in Scotland as a name for the festival. But also regions like Brittany in France, which is a Celtic region, the festival is also called Winter Night. In Wales, in Cornwall, there are very similar beliefs and practices around this festival. And I mentioned earlier about Bealtaine, the traditional start of summer, on one axis of this circle, if you imagine it, and the other side being Samhain. Both of these times, Samhain and Bealtaine, or winter and summer, are conceptualized or understood as being like symbolic cracks in time. And these times in the study of folklore and culture, we call these times liminal times. So limen is it comes from a Latin word meaning a threshold or a boundary. And liminal times are when, there's this kind of topsy-turvy feeling. Things aren't, they're not